All right, guys, so the first day we talked about how America started getting involved into World War II. Yesterday we talked about the efforts done at home to prepare for war. And today we're going to talk about key battles as well as the end of World War II and what that meant for America. One of the most significant battles and operations in World War II was D-Day, and this occurred on June 6, 1944. It was orchestrated by General Dwight D. Eisenhower, and they planned a major attack from Britain to the northern beaches of France. Operation Overlord was planned to be the largest land, sea, air operation in Army history. So German soldiers they had settled out one part of the beaches, and they were nice and high up on the land. They had a bunch of soldiers, weapons, everything ready to go, and we just decided we were going to send in soldiers repeatedly, just keep going, keep going, keep going. We were sending in bombs. We were hitting them from the beach coastline, from the air, every single way we could, over and over and over and over and over and over, nonstop until they surrendered. And it ended up being successful. It was 7 days of fighting along the 80-mile coast, and this marked the beginning of the Allied victory in Europe. So we just were relentless in dropping these bombs and sending soldiers in time after time after time after time after time, and we were able to win them over. Although it looked like we were going to lose from the position that the German soldiers held, but in the end, we were able to be successful and we won that battle, and eventually we'll see that we win the war as well. So here are some different posters showing D-Day. So you can see in this map over here, it shows you the different the different units of soldiers and the plan of attack. On the right side, you see a poster as well, and it kind of shows you, so there are 11,590 aircrafts. It shows you the flight missions, the sea vessels, aircrafts lost, troops deployed. It shows you all the numbers and how we were able to be successful. Like I said, we just kept sending in more and more and more and more. And that's how we were able to be successful. Although 10,250 people lost their lives in that fight, it was successful. It was not done in vain. Here we go. So these are some huge famous photos from the time. You see that these soldiers are looking on to the battlefront, which they will soon be approaching. And as soon as it's go time, they let down these doors right here, and the gates open. They get into the water and they begin to storm the beaches of Normandy. Here are some other photos. So you see them coming across the coastline. They are running up the beaches. You see them in the aircrafts getting ready to, they're going to open the doors. These soldiers are going to fly out, open their parachutes, land, and do their jobs. And here you see as well, you see the missiles from above, and they are storming the beaches. And this is how we were able to be successful. We just kept sending in more and more and more soldiers. So all these boats back here are full of soldiers. We're sending them in, and they are literally storming the beaches, and it was a huge success. Another way that we were fighting was in trenches. So you can see here that our soldiers would build these huge trenches, and this is called trench warfare. They would be able to hide in them, not necessarily hide in them, but they would be able to get down in them, and that was their form of protection, because if they were going up top, they knew that they would be shot. So they were able to hide in these trenches and shoot out that way, and that's how they were fighting on that front. But it was not glamorous. Of course, you're stuck in these trenches. That's where you have to relieve yourself if you need to use the restroom. You're sitting in there. You can see that there's mud and dirty ground. There's vermin. There's rats everywhere. And it was kind of disgusting, well, extremely disgusting. And it was also extremely depressing for these soldiers. So that ended up causing a lot of issues as well. One of the main things that happened was that from being in these trenches all day, people would get trench foot, and that was from having their boots stuck inside of that mud all day. This was also extremely deplorable, and these soldiers had to do boot checks and check each other's feet for these things. Here are some weapons that we had during the time. Of course, the big tanks, the AKs, and we would literally roll in and destroy what we needed to do to destroy the enemy. Okay. So Hitler's last attempt was to fell short at the Battle of the Bulge. He was attempting to protect Berlin. That is where he was staying during this time, and he did not want to give up Berlin. Allies began to liberate the death camps around the Holocaust. So we were finally sending in soldiers to help relieve those situations and set the people that were there free. And then we decided to send the Soviet army, remember, which was one of our allies, into Berlin. And Hitler knew that there was no way that he was able to be successful. He refused to surrender his city. And so instead of doing that, he committed suicide at that time. So that way he would not have to fall to the Allies. So after we determined that he was dead, his soldiers, they surrendered, and the Allies celebrated VE Day, which stands for Victory in Europe, on May 8th, 1945. Okay, so now Hitler and Germany have been defeated. Is the war over? Nope, because what are we going to do with Japan? So here are some pictures to show you the fall of Berlin. Of course, it's extremely gory. It's there's a lot of death, of course, because it's a war. We're storming in. We're trying to make sure that we are proving our point and that we are going to make Hitler want to surrender. He didn't, but the war in Europe is officially over. Here's a picture in Times Square while we are celebrating our victory in Europe, and you can see it's flooded with people. Everyone's super excited because it was not done in vain. We have won that battle, that war front. Like I said, we're still having to deal with the Pacific. We're still dealing with Japan. And the turning point of the war is with the Battle of Midway. And this is how we are able to stop the growth of the Japanese Sea Empire. They are continuing. They're extremely strong, and they were continuing to build. And during the Battle of Midway, we are able to cut them off, and this serves as a huge morale boost to the Americans. On top of winning in Europe, this is another huge win to the American people, and we start to do what is called island hopping towards Japan. So we are taking over different islands in the Pacific on the way to Japan. So we're taking over country by country, and we are hopping on the way to Japan, so that way we can eventually take over Japan. Okay, here is a picture, just a map to show you different times and how we were able to move across this way in order to continue to try to get to Japan. The Battle of Midway was done here, and this was our way of stopping Japan from growing. Here are some photographs to show you how the Battle of Midway was able to be successful. You see there's nothing but planes, missiles, bullets flying in here. You can see the ships, the explosions from the ships far below. The smoke is billowing out. We can see one of our aircraft ships, and we are sending out these aircrafts left and right in order to help us be successful in the war. So then we decide we have to come up with a decision of what we're going to do with Japan. Japan is not surrendering. They have these kamikaze pilots that aren't afraid to basically commit suicide and give their lives to the cause. And so we decide we're going to start having this Manhattan Project, where we're going to have top scientists from all around the country, even some from around the world, such as Albert Einstein, who did help with the atomic bomb. This was a top secret project. Nobody knew about it except for the scientists that were working on it. And we wanted to have them build this atomic bomb, this bomb that the world has never seen before, something so strong, so big that once it hit, there was no way that anybody could continue to fight. They would give up all at once, and that was our plan. So the project was led by J. Robert Oppenheimer to develop an atomic bomb in Los Alamos, New Mexico. So we did this in the middle of nowhere, so nobody would know what was going on. Over here in the left side, you can see there's two bombs. The smaller one is called the Little Boy, and the larger one is called the Fat Man. So these were the two atomic bombs that we decided to drop on two Japanese cities. So the first one, Little Boy, we dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. And we decided to drop the first one first, the smaller one, so that way we be like, hey, yeah, we did it. So are you going to surrender? Because we don't want to have to show you what's coming next. They didn't surrender. So 3 days later, we decided to drop Fat Man on the city of Nagasaki, and they have no choice but to surrender. If you see from the right picture here, you see the storm cloud. It looks almost like a storm cloud. This is actually a shot of the explosion from the sky past the clouds. This is literally fire. It was so hot and so intense that people that were outside would literally incinerate. It was crazy. Nobody had ever seen anything like that before. The heat, the fire, the light, it was extreme. But we knew going into it, it would cause it all to end. And it did. They eventually surrendered. So here we see on the left, these are some pictures of Hiroshima. On the left, you see what it looked like before. On the right is after. Completely decimated. Over here, we have Nagasaki on the right, and you see your before and after there as well. These cities were completely destroyed. All right. So General Douglas MacArthur led U.S. occupation and reconstruction of Japan. So after we had dropped the bombs, we actually sent in people to help them rebuild. And that is what MacArthur did. He sent these people in to help rebuild these cities. And the nuclear power could also be used for new domestic technologies after this time. So now that we have this technology, we can use it. And that's exactly what we did, and we still continue to do. However, the Soviet Union was extremely offended that we didn't tell them about the atomic bomb testing. They were our allies. They were supposed to be our friends in the war, and we should have had their back, as they felt like. We shouldn't have kept things in the dark, but we did. We didn't want anybody to know about it. So this leads to issues later on, because after the war, we see that Russia and, so the Soviet Union, which will become Russia, and the United States end up having this beef, and they are not getting along. Things are extremely complicated, intense, and even to this day, we still have this almost frenemy relationship. Okay, so President Harry Truman was the one that dropped the bomb, and his war reputation is emboldened. He is seen as almost like this hero after ordering to drop these bombs, because America starts to celebrate VJ Day, victory in Japan. And because the war is finally over and he stopped the enemy, these people that had destroyed Pearl Harbor, he is seen almost as a hero. So wait a second, where did President Truman come from? I thought FDR was president that took us into World War II. He was, but President Truman was the vice president, and when FDR passed away, he stepped in. So VJ Day, August 15th, 1945, the war is officially over. America is the winner. And as you can see from this famous photo on the left, the soldiers are home, and we are now entering, after this time, when these soldiers come home, we enter the baby boomer age, and we'll get into what that means later on.